I take off that necklace before I have you dragged through this ballroom in handcuffs." Derrick Vaughn planted one hand against the silver serving tray in Nia Bennett's grip and pushed it downward until the crystal glasses rattled. Around them, the Caldwell Foundation's annual gala continued beneath chandeliers bright enough to turn every polished surface into a mirror. A string quartet played near the marble staircase. Donors in tailored evening clothes spoke about housing grants and scholarship programs while pretending not to notice the security chief blocking the path of an 18-year-old banquet worker. Nia kept both hands around the tray. "What did you say?" Derrick leaned closer, lowering his tone without softening it. "Do not make me repeat myself. That necklace was taken from the Caldwell estate. A girl earning an hourly wage does not accidentally walk into this building wearing something worth more than her family will see in a lifetime." The words struck harder than his hand had. Nia glanced down at the small oval locket resting against the collar of her white uniform shirt. It was old, scratched near the hinge, and repaired with a narrow strip of gold that did not match the rest of the setting. To her, it had never looked expensive. It had looked like her mother. Keisha Bennett had worn it through years of hospital appointments, overdue notices, and long evenings spent sorting bills across their kitchen table. 6 weeks before the gala, when her illness had left her too weak to fasten it herself, she had pressed it into Nia's palm. "Keep this close. Do not let anyone connected to the Caldwell name take it from you." At the time, Nia had believed the warning came from medication, fear, or a memory her mother no longer had the strength to explain. Now Derrick's fingers moved toward the chain. She stepped back. "That belongs to me." His smile was small and cruel. People say that when they know ownership is the one thing they cannot prove. Across the ballroom, a glass slipped from a billionaire's hand. Arthur Caldwell had been standing beneath a portrait of his late wife when he saw the necklace against Nia's skin. For several seconds, he seemed unable to breathe. Color drained from his face so quickly that the board member beside him reached for his arm. The glass struck the floor and shattered. Arthur did not look down. He stared at the locket as if the dead had walked into the room wearing a banquet uniform. If you believe the truth should matter more than wealth or reputation, like this video as this story unfolds. Derrick followed Arthur's gaze and mistook the billionaire's shock for confirmation of theft. "You see," he said to Nia, "you just brought stolen property in front of the man whose wife owned it." Arthur began moving through the crowd. He was 66, broad-shouldered despite the weight he had lost since Hazel Caldwell's death, and dressed in a dark suit selected by an assistant who had spent weeks persuading him to attend. He had built Caldwell infrastructure from a regional paving contractor into one of the largest privately held construction groups in the South. His name stood on hospitals, university buildings, research centers, and the glass tower visible beyond the ballroom windows. Yet none of that authority seemed present in his face as he approached Nia. Only fear remained. Derrick reached for the necklace again. Nia turned away, but he caught the chain between two fingers and pulled. The clasp snapped. The locket fell into his palm. Arthur stopped so abruptly that the people behind him nearly collided with his back. "Give that to me." Derrick held it out at once. "Mr. Caldwell, I recognized it from the estate inventory. I was about to secure her and contact the police." Arthur ignored him. The locket trembled between his fingers. He turned it toward the light, tracing the mismatched gold near the hinge with his thumb. Years earlier, during a winter trip, Hazel had dropped the necklace onto a stone floor. The hinge had cracked. She had refused to send it to a jeweler because she wanted to wear it to dinner that same night. Arthur had repaired it himself using a narrow strip cut from the back of his wedding watch. The result had been uneven. Hazel had laughed when she saw it, telling him that he could build bridges across rivers, but should never be trusted with something small. No photograph of that repair had ever appeared in an insurance record, magazine profile, or estate catalog. Arthur opened the locket. The first thing he saw was Hazel. She stood beside the porch railing of their private lake house, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. She was smiling in a way Arthur had not seen during the last year of her life, not politely and not for a camera. Her arms were wrapped around a black woman Arthur did not recognize. The woman held a baby. Arthur's knees weakened. Someone pulled a chair behind him, but he did not sit. His eyes remained fixed on the photograph. Then he turned it over. 7 words were written on the back in Hazel's handwriting. "Arthur, please believe I tried to make it right." His lips moved without sound. The ballroom faded around him. He saw Hazel at the breakfast table, sliding envelopes into a leather folder whenever he entered the room. He remembered phone calls she had ended too quickly, afternoons at the lake house she had described as meetings with a charitable committee, and one unfinished conversation during her final month. "There is something about my family you do not know." He had told her they could discuss it when she was stronger. She had never become stronger. Arthur lowered the photograph. "Who are you?" Nia looked at him, then at Derrick, who still held the broken chain. "My name is Nia Bennett." "Where did you get this?" "My mother gave it to me." "What was her name?" Before Nia could answer, Bradley Mercer appeared at Arthur's side. Bradley did not hurry. He never needed to. For nearly 30 years, he had been the Caldwell family's attorney, the architect of its trusts, and the man who could quiet a boardroom simply by opening a leather portfolio. His silver hair was combed straight back, his expression disciplined, his evening suit free of the smallest crease. He studied the photograph for less than a second before closing the locket. "Arthur, not here." Arthur pulled it from his hand. "I asked her a question, and she will answer it in an appropriate setting. This room is filled with donors, reporters, and people who would turn your grief into entertainment." Bradley looked at Nia as though she were an item delivered to the wrong address. "Miss Bennett, you will accompany security." "I have not done anything." "That remains to be determined." Derrick took her by the arm. Nia pulled free. Several guests raised their phones. Ashley Rhodes, the foundation president, moved quickly toward them and signaled the event staff to close the ballroom doors. Ashley had spent 12 years building the Caldwell Foundation into an institution that survived on polished images. She could turn a funding cut into a strategic adjustment and a public scandal into a misunderstanding before breakfast. Tonight, however, she could not erase Arthur's expression or the broken chain hanging from Derrick's hand. She placed herself between the phones and Nia. "Everyone, please return to your tables. We are addressing a private estate matter." Then she faced Nia. "Do not make this worse for yourself." Nia held her gaze. "You mean worse for your guests?" Ashley's pleasant expression tightened. "I mean worse for a young woman who appears to have entered a restricted event wearing property listed as stolen. I was hired to work here. Employment is not permission to possess family valuables. It was my mother's." Bradley exhaled as though patience were a resource Nia had no right to consume. "Possession and ownership are not the same thing. You should be careful about making statements that can later be disproved." The personal contempt in Derrick's voice had been easy to recognize. Bradley's was colder. He did not threaten pain. He threatened paperwork, hearings, and official language strong enough to turn a person's life into a problem no one else wanted to touch. Arthur looked again at the photograph. "What was your mother's name?" "Keisha Bennett." Nothing in his face suggested recognition. Bradley answered too quickly. "I have never heard that name." Nia noticed. So did Arthur. Bradley placed a hand near his friend's shoulder without touching him. "You are in shock. Let us have security preserve the item, obtain her information, and review the estate files in the morning." "This is not an item." "No, it is evidence." Arthur's eyes hardened for the first time. "It was Hazel's. And if it is genuine, that makes the situation more serious, not less." Derrick escorted Nia through a service corridor while the quartet resumed playing behind them. The music sounded wrong now, too graceful for what had just happened. Kitchen workers moved aside. Some looked worried. Others lowered their eyes because temporary employees learned quickly that witnessing trouble could become a reason to lose work. The security office was narrow, windowless, and cold enough to raise bumps along Nia's arms. Derrick shut the door and placed the locket on the desk. The broken chain lay beside it. He pushed a printed form toward her. "Write that you found it." "I did not." "Write that your mother found it." "She did not." "You do not know that." "I know she gave it to me." Derrick leaned back in his chair. "Your mother is not here to confirm your story, is she?" Nia's hands tightened in her lap. He had seen the black ribbon pinned inside her uniform jacket. The staffing supervisor had been told about Keisha's death when Nia requested one day off for the funeral. Derrick had chosen the wound deliberately. "No," she said, "she is not." "Then think carefully. A dead person cannot be charged with theft. You can." The door opened before Nia answered. Arthur stepped inside, followed by Bradley and Ashley. The room became crowded at once. Derrick stood and offered Arthur the chair, but the billionaire remained near the desk. The locket looked smaller beneath the fluorescent light. Arthur pointed toward it. "There is an engraving inside the rear frame, 2 letters and a date." Bradley frowned. "That detail does not establish current ownership. It establishes that it is real." Arthur picked up the locket and carefully removed the photograph. Beneath it, faint marks appeared in the gold. H.C. Below the initials was the date of Arthur and Hazel's 25th wedding anniversary, written in tiny figures. Ashley's composure slipped. Derrick looked at Nia with new suspicion, as if authenticity made her more dangerous. Arthur returned the photograph to its place. "How did your mother know Hazel?" "I do not know." Bradley gave a humorless laugh. "A remarkable answer from someone wearing a private anniversary gift." Nia turned toward him. "My mother warned me never to give it to anyone connected to your family." For the first time, Bradley's expression changed. Only slightly, but Nia saw it. His eyes moved to the key hanging from a plain cord around her wrist. Arthur saw that too. "What else did she tell you?" "She said there were things she should have explained sooner. She became too sick before she could." "Did she leave papers?" Bradley stepped forward. "Arthur." The billionaire did not look away from Nia. "Did she?" Nia remembered the small brass key Keisha had pressed into her hand on the same afternoon she surrendered the necklace. She remembered the effort it had taken her mother to whisper one final instruction. Not in the apartment, somewhere they cannot claim was theirs. Nia lowered her wrist. "She left me a key." Bradley's tone softened, which made it more dangerous. "To what?" "I do not know." Derrick reached for her wrist. Arthur blocked him. "No one touches her again." The command settled over the room. Derrick withdrew his hand, but resentment sharpened his face. "Mr. Caldwell, she entered your event with stolen property. I am responsible for security. You broke Hazel's necklace while a room full of people watched." She resisted. "She protected something her mother gave her." Bradley closed his portfolio. "This discussion has become emotional. We need to document the chain of custody, retain the necklace, and ask Miss Bennett to remain available." Nia stood. "You are not keeping it. It belongs to the estate." "You have not proved that." Bradley gave her a look usually reserved for inexperienced attorneys who had misstated a statute. "You are confusing defiance with leverage, and you are confusing my uniform with permission to speak to me any way you want." Silence followed. Arthur looked at her differently then. Until that moment, grief had made him see the necklace, the photograph, and Hazel's handwriting. Now he saw the person standing in front of him. Nia was young, but there was nothing fragile in the way she held herself. Her eyes were tired, not uncertain. Ashley stepped between them with the practiced calm of someone trying to prevent a scene from becoming a record. "We can resolve this without police, accusations, or further embarrassment. Miss Bennett can leave tonight. The necklace will remain secured until ownership is established." "No," Nia said. Ashley smiled without warmth. Most people in your position would recognize generosity. Most people in my position know generosity does not begin with detention. Bradley looked toward Derrick. Was she told she could not leave? Derrick hesitated. You shut the door, Nia said. You stood between me and it. You threatened to have me arrested if I did not sign a false statement. I advised you of possible consequences. You told me to blame my dead mother. Arthur's jaw tightened. Ashley's eyes flicked toward the security camera above the door. Derrick saw the movement and became cautious. Everything was handled according to procedure. Nia looked up at the camera. A small green light glowed beside the lens. Then keep the recording. Bradley's expression remained still, but his attention shifted toward the system console. Arthur picked up the broken chain and handed both pieces of the necklace to Nia. Take it. Bradley objected at once. That is unwise. It is hers until someone proves otherwise. You cannot determine title based on emotion. No, but I can decide whether she leaves my building with the property she arrived wearing. Nia accepted the locket. For 1 second, her fingers touched Arthur's. His hand was cold. He looked again at the photograph through the open frame. May I have a copy? Nia closed it. Not tonight. The answer hurt him, but he nodded. Ashley arranged for Nia to leave through a rear entrance. By then, several videos of the confrontation had already spread online. None showed the photograph clearly, but all captured Arthur Caldwell's face when the locket opened. Before Nia reached the loading area, Ashley caught up with her carrying a white envelope. This is not an admission of fault. Nia did not take it. What is it? Compensation for the inconvenience, along with a confidentiality agreement. You would agree not to discuss the event, the necklace, Mr. Caldwell's reaction, or any contact your mother may have had with the Caldwell family. You prepared that quickly. We prepare for complications. Is that what you call me? Ashley's gaze settled on the cheap shoes Nia wore for banquet work. I call you a young woman facing institutions with more resources than she understands. Take the money, finish school. Give yourself a future instead of attaching your name to a story people will stop believing as soon as the facts become inconvenient. Nia looked at the envelope. How much? Ashley named an amount large enough to cover several months of rent, and the medical debt collectors had begun calling about. For a moment, Nia imagined signing. She pictured the overdue balance disappearing, a working car replacing the bus route, and a semester of classes paid in advance. Then she remembered Keisha struggling to lift the necklace over her head. Do not let them take it. Nia pushed the envelope back. My mother spent her final weeks afraid of your foundation. I want to know why. Ashley's smile vanished. Curiosity is expensive, Miss Bennett. So is silence. The rear door closed between them. By the time Nia reached her apartment, the temporary staffing agency had left 3 messages. The first requested an urgent conversation. The second informed her that the Caldwell Foundation had raised concerns about misconduct. The third terminated her assignment and suspended her from future placements pending review. Nia listened to all 3 while standing beside the kitchen table, where Keisha's unopened medical bills remained stacked in careful rows. The apartment was too quiet without her mother. For nearly 2 years, every surface had held some part of Keisha's illness. Medication bottles, insurance letters, appointment cards, blankets carried from one room to another. After the funeral, Nia had cleared only what she had to. The rest remained because removing it felt too much like agreeing that Keisha was not coming back. She placed the broken necklace beside a framed photograph of them taken at her high school graduation. Keisha was thinner in the picture than anyone outside the family understood, but she had smiled through the entire ceremony. Nia studied the locket. The woman in Hazel's arms looked familiar in a way that resisted explanation. Not identical to Keisha, and perhaps not even close enough to mean anything, yet there was something in the shape of her eyes, in the tilt of her head. Nia opened the back again. Arthur, please believe I tried to make it right. The message was not written to Keisha. It was written to Arthur, which meant Hazel had expected the photograph to reach him eventually, but she had placed it in a necklace given to Keisha. Nia took the brass key from her wrist. It was stamped with a faded letter and a 4-digit code. The code meant nothing to her, but the letter matched the logo of a storage company on the north side of Atlanta. She reached for her coat. At the Caldwell residence, Arthur stood alone in Hazel's dressing room. No one had changed it since her death. Her brushes remained aligned on the vanity. A silk scarf hung across the chair. The faint scent of her perfume had vanished months ago, yet Arthur still paused at the doorway as if entering without permission. Bradley followed him inside. "You should rest." Arthur opened the drawer where Hazel had kept the necklace. The velvet case was empty. "When was this reported missing?" "During the estate inventory." "Who reported it?" The appraiser noted the discrepancy. "Who last confirmed it was here?" Bradley removed his glasses. "Arthur, more than 2 years have passed. Staff members came and went. Nurses had access to the house. So did contractors, caregivers, and charity personnel. Hazel gave it to that girl's mother. That is an assumption. It was around the woman's neck. People place objects around their necks in photographs. That does not create title." Arthur closed the drawer. "You knew the mother's name." "I said I did not." "You answered before Nia finished speaking." Bradley's expression carried the weary patience of an advisor forced to correct an old friend. "You are grieving again because someone placed a powerful image in front of you. That does not mean the image is honest. The photograph was taken at the lake house, so it appears. I built that porch. And photographs can be altered." Arthur turned. Hazel's handwriting was not altered. "You cannot know that after looking at 7 words under ballroom lighting. I knew her writing for 41 years. Bradley put his glasses back on. "Then you also knew she supported dozens of private causes. Keisha Bennett may have been a recipient, an employee, or someone Hazel tried to help. None of those possibilities justify allowing her daughter to construct a claim against the estate. No one mentioned a claim. She brought the necklace into the most visible event of the year. She was carrying a tray, an excellent position from which to be noticed." The accusations settled into the room. Arthur stared at the empty case. "You think she planned it?" "I think grief makes people vulnerable, and wealth attracts rehearsed coincidences." Arthur walked toward Hazel's desk. Beneath the glass top lay old photographs of their children, grandchildren, and the early years of the company. No image showed the woman from the locket. "Find every reference to Keisha Bennett. I will have the estate office review the files." "No, you find it." Bradley's gaze sharpened. "Are you questioning my handling of Hazel's estate?" "I am questioning why my wife gave away the necklace I placed around her neck on our anniversary, and why I learned about it from a banquet worker." "You learned nothing tonight except that a photograph exists." Arthur faced him. "That photograph broke open a part of my marriage I did not know was closed." Bradley's tone became quieter. "Then do not let a stranger decide what it means." He left Arthur in the dressing room. At 7:40 p.m., Nia arrived at the storage facility. The office was closed, but the key opened an exterior access door and a narrow metal box in the climate-controlled section. Keisha had rented the smallest available unit. Inside sat a plastic document case, a canvas bag, and a wooden box with no lock. Nia carried everything to a folding table beneath the fluorescent lights. The canvas bag contained clothes she remembered from childhood, including a blue coat Keisha had stopped wearing years earlier. The wooden box held birthday cards, school photographs, and 3 letters addressed in an elegant hand. "Keisha, I understand why you left without answering me. I asked for patience when patience was the one thing I had no right to request." The letter was signed, Hazel. Nia read it twice. A second letter referred to a meeting near Piedmont Park. A third included an apology for allowing other people to define what could be acknowledged. None explained how the women had met. None used words such as daughter, sister, beneficiary, or family, yet the emotion was unmistakable. Hazel had not written like a donor thanking someone for attending a program. She had written like a person seeking forgiveness. The document case contained photocopied account schedules, handwritten notes, and calendars from the final 18 months of Hazel's life. Several pages were incomplete. Others had sections cut away with scissors. On one yellow legal sheet, Keisha had driven 5 questions. Why did she wait? Why does Bradley control every meeting? Why does the fund use 3 different names? Why did they ask me to sign without counsel? What happens to Nia if I refuse? Nia's breath caught at the final line. She searched the case again, turning every envelope upside down. No agreement appeared, no trust document, no explanation. At the bottom, she found a receipt from a photo restoration shop. The date was 6 months before Hazel's death. The description listed one private print prepared from an original digital file. Nia photographed every page and returned the originals to the box. She knew enough from dealing with insurance companies never to carry the only copy of something important. When she stepped outside, a dark sedan sat across the street. Its lights were off. Nia paused beneath the security lamp. The driver's face was hidden. After several seconds, the engine started and the vehicle pulled away without approaching. She told herself it could have been anyone. Then her phone rang. Derrick's name did not appear, but she recognized his voice. You were offered an easy exit. How did you get this number? You worked in a secured building. Your contact information is not a secret. What do you want? I want you to understand that the necklace remains listed as estate property. Mr. Caldwell gave it back. He made an emotional decision in a crowded room. That does not change the inventory. Are you threatening me again? I am explaining that returning stolen property voluntarily looks better than having it recovered during an investigation. Nia looked toward the road where the sedan had disappeared. Were you outside the storage facility? Silence followed. Then Derrick laughed once. You think very highly of your importance. The call ended. The following morning, Arthur requested the full estate inventory. Bradley sent a summary instead. When Arthur demanded source documents, the estate office informed him that historical records were being migrated into a new system. That answer disturbed him more than an outright refusal. He contacted Ashley, who assured him the gala incident had been contained. No police report had been filed. The foundation had issued no public accusation. The videos circulating online were being described as a misunderstanding involving a family keepsake. Did you offer Nia money? He asked. Ashley paused. I offered a standard confidentiality resolution. Why? To protect you. From what? From becoming the center of a manufactured inheritance story. Arthur looked out across the city from his office. She never asked for an inheritance. Not directly. Did she ask for money? No. Did she threaten the foundation? No. Then what exactly were you paying her not to say? Ashley's answer came after careful consideration. That you recognize the necklace. Arthur ended the call. That afternoon, Nia visited the photo restoration shop listed on Keisha's receipt. The owner had retired, but his former technician, an older woman named Amber Mills, still worked there 2 days each week. Amber examined the receipt through reading glasses. I remember this order. Nia tried to keep hope out of her voice. Why? The woman who brought it in was nervous. She would not leave the original file with us. She sat beside the workstation the whole time. My mother? Amber looked at a photograph Nia showed her. Yes, that was her. Did she say where the image came from? No, but the file contained printer metadata. The original had been produced on a professional die printer, not a home machine. We calibrated the copy to match it. Can the printer be identified? Possibly if the metadata was retained. Amber searched an archive drive and located a service record. The original print had come from a model used by professional photographers in private offices. The embedded device identifier was still present. 2 days later, after comparing the identifier with purchase records found through a discontinued service portal, Amber called Nia. The printer had been registered to Caldwell Lake Holdings. The address matched Arthur's private lake residence. Nia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the photograph. Hazel had not encountered Keisha by chance in a public program. She had brought her to a private home and created a photograph she expected Arthur to see. Whatever their connection was, someone had gone to considerable effort to prevent him from learning about it. The public pressure began that same afternoon. A business gossip site published a story claiming an unnamed temporary worker had confronted Arthur Caldwell with a valuable family heirloom and an unverified personal narrative. The article cited foundation sources who described the worker as emotionally aggressive. Another outlet reported that the necklace had disappeared after Hazel's death. A third mentioned possible criminal referral. Nia's name appeared before sunset. Her former staffing agency released a statement saying she had violated professional conduct expectations. People she had never met began sending messages. Some accused her of targeting a grieving widower. Others demanded proof that Keisha had known Hazel. A photograph of Nia leaving the storage facility appeared online, taken from across the street. She stared at that image for a long time. The dark sedan had not been a coincidence. Arthur saw the article during a meeting with 3 company executives. He dismissed the room and called Ashley. "You said this was contained." It was until outside parties began contacting reporters. Which outside parties? We do not know. The article quotes foundation sources. That phrase can mean anyone. It means someone spoke. Ashley remained calm. Public interest was inevitable. We shaped the initial context so the foundation would not appear unprepared. You called her aggressive. I did not use that word. You allowed someone to use it. Arthur, a billionaire, was photographed nearly collapsing in front of a young woman wearing his dead wife's necklace. Without context, the story becomes whatever people want it to be. And your chosen context was that she was a criminal. No one called her a criminal. You suggested it carefully enough to avoid responsibility. Ashley's tone cooled. My responsibility is to this institution. Donors do not fund confusion. Arthur set the phone down without saying goodbye. That evening, he drove himself to the lake house for the first time since Hazel's death. The property sat beyond a line of pines, far from the road. Dust covered the porch railing visible in the photograph. Arthur stood in the exact place where Hazel had held Keisha. He tried to imagine the scene. Hazel arranging the camera. Keisha holding a baby. Perhaps Nia herself, though the photograph was too old and the child's face too small to be certain. Inside, the professional printer remained in a cabinet beside the study. Arthur found its purchase label and serial identifier. It matched the record Amber had given Nia, though Arthur did not yet know she had traced it too. He searched Hazel's desk and found a locked lower drawer. The key was missing. Bradley's estate team had cataloged the furniture, but the drawer did not appear on the summary Arthur had received. He called the household manager who had served the family for 20 years. Did Hazel bring visitors here during her final year? The manager hesitated. A few. Was one of them a woman named Keisha Bennett? Another pause. I was told not to discuss Mrs. Caldwell's private appointments. By whom? Mr. Mercer. Arthur looked toward the printer. When? After Mrs. Caldwell died. Bradley had not simply failed to recognize Keisha's name. He had instructed staff not to speak about her. Arthur returned to Atlanta before midnight and contacted Audrey Collins. Audrey was a trust litigator known for representing beneficiaries against institutions wealthy enough to exhaust most opponents before trial. She had also turned down Caldwell work twice because Bradley insisted on controlling the scope of her review. When Arthur asked her to meet privately, she agreed on one condition. If this concerns a possible beneficiary, I will not serve as your personal shield. I need the truth. That is what people say before they learn the truth may cost them control. Then tell me what you require. Independent access to the trust records. No reporting through Bradley. No destruction schedule. No public statement using my name. And if the young woman needs separate counsel, you will not interfere. Arthur accepted. Audrey met Nia the next morning at a quiet legal clinic rather than a Caldwell office. She wore a charcoal suit and carried no visible jewelry. Unlike Bradley, she did not begin by questioning how Nia obtained the necklace. She began with the detention. Tell me exactly when you believed you were no longer free to leave. Nia described Derrick blocking the door, the demand for a written confession, the threat of arrest, and the security camera. Audrey took notes. Did anyone ask permission to search you? No. Did they take anything besides the necklace? No, but Derrick reached for the key on my wrist. What does it open? A storage box. Have you removed the contents? I photographed them and returned the originals. Audrey looked up with approval she did not express aloud. Good. Nia handed her copies of Hazel's letters, Keisha's notes, the payment schedules, and the printer identification. Audrey read without interruption. When she reached the final question on Keisha's legal pad, her pen stopped. What happens to Nia if I refuse? Refuse what? Audrey asked. I do not know. Did your mother ever mention a trust? Not directly. Did she receive regular payments? Not that I saw. We struggled with rent and medical bills. Audrey examined the financial schedules. They listed disbursements from entities with similar names: the Caldwell Family Support Trust, Caldwell Legacy Services, and a private charitable fund associated with Hazel. These are not complete statements. I know. They may not even belong to the same legal structure. Then why did my mother keep them together? That is one of the questions we need to answer. Nia pointed to repeated vendor identifiers beside payments marked as housing outreach, educational support, and administrative consultation. These codes repeat. Vendor codes often do, not across unrelated organizations. Audrey followed her finger. Nia explained how she had spent 2 years disputing hospital charges. Providers used different names, but their internal billing identifiers revealed when the same company submitted duplicate claims. On the Caldwell schedules, 3 supposed nonprofit vendors shared fragments of the same identifying sequence. Audrey made a second set of notes. Did you search the entities? 2 were dissolved. 1 leads to a consulting company registered through another company. Whose? I could not find the final owner. Audrey knew where to look. By the end of the day, she had traced one company to a business manager who had worked for Bradley Mercer's private advisory practice. The connection did not prove theft. It did prove that funds represented as charitable support had moved through entities close to the trustee's professional network. Arthur received Audrey's preliminary report in person. There may be a legitimate explanation, she told him. Administrative vendors often share service providers. But you do not believe that. I believe records should answer questions without requiring someone to hide the records first. Arthur told her about the household manager's instruction from Bradley. Audrey's expression hardened. Do not confront him yet. He lied to me. Then assume he prepared for the possibility that you would discover the lie. What can he do? A trustee with control over records can shape chronology, claim missing files were never received, or produce documents that change the legal question entirely. The last possibility arrived the following morning. Bradley called Arthur, Nia, and Audrey to a conference room at the Caldwell corporate tower. Ashley was already seated at the table. Derrick stood near the door, no longer wearing a gala tuxedo, but still carrying the same contempt. Bradley placed a document in front of them. This should end the speculation. The title read, Voluntary Renunciation and Full Release. Keisha Bennett's name appeared at the bottom. According to the document, Keisha had acknowledged receiving all consideration owed to her, denied any further interest in Hazel Caldwell's estate or related trusts, and agreed that neither she nor her descendants would assert future claims. Nia read the signature twice. That is not hers. Bradley folded his hands. You are qualified to authenticate handwriting? I watched my mother sign forms every week for 2 years. She did not make the letter K like that. Grief does not create expertise. Arthur looked at the notarization. When was this signed? Shortly before Hazel's final hospitalization. Why was I never told? Because it concerned a private arrangement Hazel made before seeking legal closure. What arrangement? Bradley's answer came slowly. Hazel provided financial assistance to Miss Bennett's mother. The assistance became substantial. When concerns arose that the relationship might be misrepresented, Keisha accepted a final settlement. Nia pushed the paper away. We could not afford one of my mother's treatments. What substantial assistance? Mismanagement after payment does not invalidate payment. You are saying she wasted it? I am saying financial hardship does not prove funds were never provided. Ashley spoke with rehearsed sympathy. Nia, families under pressure do not always share every decision with their children. My mother shared every bill because I had to call the insurance company for her. Then perhaps she wanted to protect you from this. Nia looked at her. From money we never had? Bradley opened another folder. We are filing for a judicial declaration that you possess no enforceable interest in the Caldwell estate or any related trust. This will prevent continuing reputational harm. Audrey read the filing. You prepared this before the gala. Bradley did not blink. The document template existed. The supporting affidavit is dated 3 days before Nia entered the ballroom. Arthur turned sharply. Bradley remained composed. The estate office received information that the necklace might surface. From whom? Audrey asked. That information is privileged. You do not represent the necklace. I represent the trust and related Caldwell entities. You may soon need to identify which client authorized you to move against an 18-year-old who had not made a claim. Bradley's polite expression disappeared. You are creating conflict where none exists. No, I am locating the conflict you buried under paperwork. Derrick shifted near the door. Bradley looked at Nia. You have been given several chances to step away. Instead, you entered private storage, contacted former vendors, and circulated selected records without context. Nia's skin went cold. She had not told him about Amber, nor had she publicly shared the storage documents. How do you know who I contacted? Bradley ignored the question. Return the necklace. Withdraw any assertion involving Mrs. Caldwell. The foundation will refrain from pursuing recovery costs. That sounds like a threat, Audrey said. It is an offer. Nia leaned forward. My mother wrote that you controlled every meeting. Did you make her sign this? Your mother sought resolution. Did she sign it? The document speaks for itself. No, you are speaking for it because she cannot. Bradley's eyes narrowed. Your mother understood the consequences of becoming attached to a wealthy family. You should learn the same lesson before your opportunities become permanently limited. There it was, stripped of legal polish. Not advice, not concern. A promise that institutions could close around her until every employer, landlord, and school saw risk before they saw a person. Arthur stood. This meeting is over. Bradley remained seated. The filing proceeds with or without your approval. You work for my family. I serve the legal interests of the trust. Hazel created that trust, and she appointed professionals so grief would not replace governance. Arthur gathered the documents. Then governance will survive independent review. Outside the conference room, Nia waited for the elevator while Arthur approached her. I did not know about that release. She looked straight ahead. You did not know about my mother. You did not know about the necklace. You did not know your lawyer had staff ordered not to talk. There seems to be a great deal you did not know. I trusted Bradley. My mother was afraid of him. I understand that now. No, you understand that he lied to you. That is not the same as understanding what he did to her. The elevator doors opened, but Nia did not enter. She removed a photocopy of one of Keisha's notes from her folder. A line near the bottom referenced a message sent to AC regarding a family matter. Arthur read it. The date was almost a year before Hazel died. His executive office had received a memorandum that month from Bradley describing a private family concern requiring no action. Arthur remembered seeing the phrase. He had been preparing for a major acquisition and had signed a stack of routing instructions without asking for details. "I saw something," he admitted. Nia's face changed. "What?" "A memorandum. It did not include your mother's name, but it said family." "Yes. And you let Bradley handle it." Arthur had no answer that could repair the moment. Nia nodded slowly. "My mother did not need you to know every detail. She needed you to ask one question." She stepped into the elevator. Arthur remained outside as the doors closed. For the next several days, communication between them stopped. The emotional distance gave Bradley room to move. Ashley authorized the release of selected messages from the staffing agency showing that Nia had asked how much a confidential resolution might involve. The messages omitted her immediate refusal. Headlines changed from "banquet worker detained" to "young woman sought payment after necklace confrontation." Derrick filed a supplemental incident report claiming Nia had behaved unpredictably and attempted to conceal the locket. The report did not mention that he broke the chain or pressured her to blame Keisha. Fiona Blake, the foundation's director of archives, received instructions to consolidate all files connected to Hazel's private trust activity. The request came through Bradley's office and included a list of obsolete entries to be removed during migration. One entry troubled her. The record carried no visible document, only a scan date, a restricted access marker, and a reference code used for amendments affecting private beneficiaries. The name attached to it was not Keisha Bennett. It was a different surname. Fiona opened the deletion request again. Bradley had personally approved it. She moved the entry into a review folder instead. Across town, Audrey examined the renunciation document under magnification. The paper was consistent with stock used by Bradley's office, but the signature page showed compression artifacts that differed from the rest. The notary stamp belonged to a former employee who had relocated months before the stated signing date. None of that alone proved fabrication. Together, it justified deeper scrutiny. Audrey requested the trust's complete document register, including deleted and superseded files. Bradley's office responded that older materials were unavailable because of system migration. She requested migration logs. The foundation provided a summary. She demanded server-level records. No answer came. Nia continued sorting Keisha's papers at the storage facility. Beneath the lining of the wooden box, she found a folded appointment card bearing the name of a law firm that had closed after its senior partner retired. On the back, Keisha had written a date and 4 words. Original, signed. Bradley received copy. Nia photographed the card and sent it to Audrey. The retired lawyer's firm had merged into a larger practice. Its archived client files were stored off-site, and access required a formal search request. Audrey submitted one immediately. That evening, Arthur called her. "I want to repair what happened with Nia. Then do not begin by asking her to forgive you." "What should I begin with?" "The records." Audrey told him about the appointment card and the unavailable document register. Arthur authorized direct forensic access to the foundation servers using his controlling authority as founder. Ashley objected, arguing that outside review could expose donor information. Bradley sent a letter warning that interference with trustee systems might violate fiduciary protocols. Arthur signed the authorization anyway. The forensic team arrived at 6:30 a.m. the next day. Fiona watched from her office as technicians created protected images of the archive servers. Bradley called twice. She did not answer. By noon, the team had recovered fragments of deleted index entries, but not the documents themselves. One fragment matched the reference on Keisha's appointment card. Another showed that a file had been scanned into the system 9 days after the date written on the back. The file title had been overwritten. The visible version now described routine charitable correspondence. Yet an earlier index label remained buried in the backup. Audrey stood behind the technician as he restored the text. Private Trust Amendment. Her eyes moved to the access history. The document had been received, scanned, and routed to Bradley Mercer's office. 3 weeks later, its status changed from active to superseded. No replacement amendment appeared anywhere in the register. Audrey called Arthur first. He answered before the first ring ended. "We found the trace." Of what? "A trust amendment connected to the period when Hazel was meeting Keisha." "Does it name Nia?" "The document itself is still missing." "Then what do we know?" "We know Bradley's office received it. We know the archive was later altered. And we know someone tried to erase the fact that it ever existed." Arthur said nothing. Audrey looked through the glass wall of the server room. Fiona stood in the corridor holding a printed deletion request against her chest. Fear had replaced her usual professional calm. "There is more," Audrey said. Fiona entered and placed the page on the table. The deletion order had been issued 3 days after Keisha Bennett's death. At the bottom was Bradley's electronic approval. Audrey stared at the signature, then at the recovered index glowing on the monitor. Whatever Hazel had tried to make right had not disappeared by accident. Someone had seen the amendment, understood what it could change, and buried it before Nia ever walked into the gala wearing her mother's necklace. Fiona Blake did not sit down after placing the deletion order on the table. Her hands remained locked around the back of the empty chair, knuckles pale beneath the server room lights. "I did not delete the amendment," she said. Audrey Collins studied her. "Who did?" "I do not know who pressed the final command. I only know who ordered the record removed." Arthur Caldwell turned the printed page toward himself. Bradley Mercer's approval appeared at the bottom, beneath a date 3 days after Keisha Bennett's death. "Why would he wait until then?" Arthur asked. Fiona looked through the glass wall before answering, as though expecting Bradley to emerge from the empty corridor. "Because Mrs. Bennett could no longer challenge him." The sentence settled heavily over the room. Arthur had spent days telling himself there might still be an explanation that stopped short of deliberate cruelty. A filing error, a dispute over language, a trustee making a rigid decision under pressure. Fiona's answer stripped away the last of those possibilities. Audrey remained focused on what could be proved. "Start at the beginning. What did you see?" Fiona pulled out the chair but stayed standing. "About 2 years ago, Mr. Mercer's office sent a sealed packet to archives. It was marked for restricted indexing. I scanned the cover sheet, entered the date, and routed the digital copy back to his office. I was not permitted to open the trust document itself." "Was that unusual?" "For ordinary correspondence, yes. For private family instruments, no." "Did the index identify a beneficiary?" "Not in the visible field. The restricted metadata contained a former surname and a descendant notation." Nia had been silent near the door. Now she stepped closer. "What surname?" Fiona lowered her eyes. "Ellison." The name meant nothing to Arthur. It did something very different to Nia. Her mother had kept an old-school certificate in the apartment, one Nia had seen only once when they moved after an eviction. The certificate had carried the name Keisha Ellison. When Nia asked about it, Keisha had said it belonged to a life she did not discuss. "My mother used that name when she was young," Nia said. Audrey's attention sharpened. "Was Bennett her married name?" "No, she changed it before I was born." "Did she ever tell you why?" "She said some names came with questions she was tired of answering." Fiona continued. "The entry was later marked superseded, but no replacement document was uploaded. Last month, Mr. Mercer's office sent a migration list. That index was included among records to be removed. I moved it into review because the instruction did not match our retention policy." "Then why did the system show deletion fragments?" Audrey asked. "Someone with administrator access bypassed my review folder." "Who had that level of access?" "Mr. Mercer's technology consultant 2 foundation officers, and me. Ashley Rhodes was one of those officers. Arthur's face hardened. Did Ashley know? I cannot prove what she knew. I can prove her credentials were used to open the file history 2 days before the gala. The gala. Before Nia wore the necklace into the ballroom, someone inside the foundation had already been searching for the buried amendment. That explained the prepared court papers, the rapid confidentiality agreement, and Derrick's certainty that the necklace belonged to the estate. They had not been surprised by Nia. They had been waiting for evidence connected to Keisha to surface. Audrey turned to the forensic technician. Preserve the access logs in 3 separate locations. No one alters the original server image. Document every transfer. Then she faced Fiona. You need your own attorney. Fiona's voice became unsteady. Am I under investigation? You participated in a system where records were hidden. Whether you become a witness, a defendant, or both will depend on what you did next and whether you tell the truth now. I followed instructions. That will not answer every question. Fiona nodded, accepting a consequence she had spent too long pretending might never arrive. Arthur called Bradley from the conference room adjoining the server area. Audrey activated the speaker and began recording after notifying him. Bradley answered with controlled irritation. You have allowed outside technicians into privileged systems. This must stop immediately. Arthur looked at Nia before responding. Did Hazel sign a trust amendment naming Keisha Ellison? A brief silence followed. I will not discuss confidential instruments over an unsecured line. You told me there was no claim. I said there was no enforceable claim. That was not my question. Bradley's patience thinned. Hazel explored several charitable and personal arrangements during a period of declining health. Many were incomplete, inconsistent, or revoked. Was one of them signed? Arthur, you are asking a legal question as though it has a simple, emotional answer. Did you receive it? I received drafts. Fiona covered her mouth. Audrey leaned toward the phone. The archive index identifies an executed amendment, not a draft. Bradley did not respond at once. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The friendly advisor was gone. What remained was the lawyer who measured every sentence for future use. I do not consent to questioning by counsel whose role has never been authorized by the trustee. Arthur ended the call. Less than an hour later, Bradley filed an emergency motion seeking to block further access to the trust records. He argued that Arthur, as founder of the foundation, had no authority to invade separate fiduciary systems. He also asked the court to confirm that Nia lacked standing because blood relation alone did not create beneficiary rights. The argument was legally plausible. That was what made Bradley dangerous. He did not need every claim to be true. He needed enough procedure to delay the people searching for the truth while he controlled the documents they needed. Audrey responded that afternoon. She did not ask the court to declare Nia an heir. She requested preservation of all records, appointment of an independent custodian, and temporary restrictions on transfers from the disputed trust. Her filing attached the deletion order, the archive fragments, the inconsistent renunciation document, and Fiona's sworn statement. The judge scheduled an expedited hearing. Bradley arrived with 3 attorneys, 2 assistants in boxes arranged to suggest a history too complicated for anyone outside his team to understand. Ashley sat behind him. Derrick occupied the far end of the bench, wearing the expression of a man who still believed authority could be restored if enough people acted as though nothing had changed. Nia entered beside Audrey. Arthur came alone. The courtroom was smaller than the ceremonial chambers shown in the news. There was no audience waiting for a dramatic confession. Only attorneys, clerks, a court reporter, and several rows of observers who had learned that major financial battles were often decided in rooms without chandeliers. Bradley began with restraint. This dispute has been inflated by grief, publicity, and speculation. Miss Bennett has no established legal relationship to the trust. The necklace may raise sentimental questions, but sentiment does not create standing. Audrey did not object. When her turn came, she agreed. Blood relation alone does not make someone a beneficiary. A photograph does not create trust rights. A necklace does not transfer financial authority. Bradley glanced toward his team, pleased by the apparent concession. Audrey continued, "That is why we are not asking the court to rely on any of those things." She placed a certified archive receipt on the evidence table. The successor firm of Hazel's retired attorney had completed its search the night before. In an off-site storage facility, inside a closed client file that had never been transferred to Bradley, the archivist found an original document bearing Hazel Caldwell's signature, 2 witness signatures, and a notarized execution page. The title matched the deleted index, Private Trust Amendment and Restatement of Beneficiary Provisions. Bradley's face did not collapse. He was too practiced for that. Only his left hand moved, pressing flat against the table. Audrey called the first witness, an attorney who had been a junior associate when Hazel signed the instrument. She remembered the meeting because Hazel had refused to let Bradley attend. Hazel had appeared alert. She asked detailed questions. She reviewed every page, corrected the spelling of one name, and signed only after confirming what would happen if the primary beneficiary died before receiving notice. That beneficiary was Keisha Bennett. If Keisha died first, the rights passed to her only living descendant, Nia Bennett. The amendment did not make Nia an heir to Arthur's company or the Caldwell fortune. It did not place billions in her name. It established a separately funded trust created from Hazel's property, providing education, housing assistance, medical support, and long-term distributions for the daughter Hazel had lost and the granddaughter she had only recently found. Nia sat motionless. She had prepared herself for proof that Keisha knew Hazel. She had not prepared to hear her mother described as Hazel's daughter. Audrey introduced the adoption records next. They had been unsealed by court order after the amendment provided a lawful basis for inquiry. Hazel had given birth at 17. Her parents arranged a closed adoption and sent the child to another county under the name Keisha Ellison. Decades later, Hazel found her through an intermediary. The woman in the locket photograph was not a charity recipient. She was Hazel's firstborn daughter. The baby in her arms was Nia. Arthur lowered his head. Every unexplained absence from Hazel's final years rearranged itself. The private calls, the guarded meetings, the fear in her unfinished confession. She had not been hiding an affair, a debt, or a secret financial mistake. She had been trying to recover a child taken from her before she had the power to resist. Bradley rose. The adoption records establish history, not the continuing validity of the amendment. The settler later resolved the matter through a release signed by Keisha Bennett. He presented the renunciation document. Audrey had expected it. She called the former notary whose stamp appeared on the page. The woman testified that she had moved out of Georgia before the stated signing date. She had returned her notary seal to the office administrator and never met Keisha. A forensic document examiner then explained that the signature image had been inserted electronically. Compression patterns showed it came from a separate source. The page had been created after Keisha's death, not before Hazel's hospitalization, as Bradley claimed. Finally, the court heard from a record specialist who traced the file's creation to a workstation assigned to Bradley's private advisory office. Bradley objected to each step. The judge allowed the evidence provisionally, making clear that final findings would require a fuller proceeding. Even so, the direction of the hearing had changed. Audrey saved the simplest evidence for last. She displayed the trust amendment's delivery receipt. Bradley's office had signed for the copy. His employee scanned it. His credentials later accessed the index. His approval authorized deletion after Keisha died. The judge looked over the bench. "Mr. Mercer, did you notify Miss Bennett that she was identified as a contingent beneficiary?" Bradley stood. "No, Your Honor. We disputed the instrument's validity." "Did you seek judicial guidance before withholding notice?" "No." Did you preserve the document? The original was retained by separate counsel. That was not my question. Bradley paused. No, Your Honor. The court did not order anyone arrested. No one was led away in handcuffs. Justice did not arrive as a single theatrical blow. Instead, the judge entered a preservation order covering all physical and digital records. Transfers from the disputed trust were frozen except for necessary expenses approved by a neutral custodian. Bradley was temporarily suspended from exercising trustee authority. An independent fiduciary would conduct a full accounting. The renunciation document and deletion history were referred to the appropriate investigative authorities for review. The court also recognized that Nia had presented sufficient evidence of beneficiary status to participate in the proceedings. It was not the end. It was the first time the system had been forced to acknowledge that she belonged in the room. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps. Ashley moved toward a waiting car, while foundation staff tried to block questions. One journalist called out that the amendment proved Nia was Arthur Caldwell's granddaughter. Arthur stopped. No, he said, loud enough for every microphone to capture. She is not my biological granddaughter. She is Hazel's granddaughter. Her mother was Hazel's daughter, and the distinction matters because the truth should not be rewritten for a cleaner headline. Nia watched from several feet away. Arthur continued. Keisha Bennett was denied recognition during her life. My wife tried to correct that. People entrusted with her wishes interfered. I failed to ask questions when I had the power to ask them. That failure belongs to me. Ashley reached him before he could say more. You are exposing the foundation to liability. Arthur looked at her. You used foundation access to open the trust archive before the gala. Her expression remained composed. I reviewed a risk file after receiving notice that estate property might appear. Who gave you notice? She did not answer. Bradley? We were protecting the institution. You protected it from a lawful beneficiary. We did not know that then. You knew enough to prepare court papers before Nia entered the building. Ashley lowered her voice. One emotional mistake can destroy decades of work. Arthur's response was quiet. Then you should not have built those decades on the assumption that reputation mattered more than truth. As founder, Arthur still controlled the voting structure of the charitable foundation, though Bradley had spent years encouraging him to act as a ceremonial figure. That afternoon, Arthur convened an emergency board meeting. He did not demand that the board declare anyone guilty. He presented the access logs, the public statements, the prepared filing, and Ashley's authorization of the confidentiality offer. By evening, Ashley had been suspended. 2 weeks later, she resigned after the board concluded that she had ignored contradictory evidence and approved a campaign designed to damage Nia's credibility. Investigators found no proof that Ashley created the forged release or diverted trust funds, so no criminal charge followed. Her consequence was professional, not theatrical. The institutions that had praised her judgment began quietly removing her name from future events. Derrick's outcome came sooner. The preserved security recording showed him blocking the door, reaching for Nia's key, and urging her to blame her dead mother. His incident report omitted all 3 facts. The security contractor terminated him for dishonesty and excessive conduct. Nia's attorney filed a separate civil claim based on the detention and the broken necklace. Months later, the contractor and foundation resolved the claim without admitting criminal wrongdoing. The settlement paid Nia's legal expenses and provided compensation, but it did not erase the memory of being trapped in that room. Fiona hired her own counsel and began cooperating with the independent accounting. She admitted that she had followed restricted record instructions for years without asking why. She had not fabricated the release, but she had helped maintain a system where Bradley could hide documents behind classification codes. Her cooperation protected her from being treated as the scheme's architect. It did not preserve her position. She resigned, surrendered her records credentials, and later testified before a professional review panel. Bradley's collapse took longer. The neutral trustee traced transfers from Hazel's trust into 3 consulting entities connected to his advisory network. Some payments might have been defensible administrative expenses. Others had no supporting contracts. Several charitable grants had been redirected through companies that charged fees before forwarding reduced amounts to their intended recipients. Prosecutors opened an investigation into possible forgery, theft by conversion, and false statements. Bradley was indicted on selected counts more than a year after the gala. He received bail, denied wrongdoing, and argued that every payment reflected authorized professional services. His bar proceeding remained unresolved even longer. There was no instant conviction and no universal punishment. Some employees who had followed bad instructions kept their jobs. Several board members claimed they never saw enough information to intervene. A portion of the missing money could not be traced conclusively. Yet the machinery Bradley once controlled no longer belonged to him. Every document had an independent custodian. Every disputed transfer required explanation. Every witness he had expected to intimidate now spoke under oath. Nia's life did not transform overnight. The court authorized limited trust distributions for tuition, stable housing, and counseling while the accounting continued. She remained careful with money, measuring purchases against years of scarcity. She returned to school and studied financial compliance, not because she wanted to live inside the Caldwell world, but because she had learned how easily ordinary people could be erased by records no one challenged. Arthur offered to pay every expense personally. Nia refused. "The trust was my grandmother's decision," she told him. "I will not replace what she intended with what makes you feel less guilty." The words hurt, but he accepted them. Their relationship grew in small, uncertain steps. He showed her the lake house without asking her to call it home. She showed him Keisha's letters without surrendering the originals. Sometimes they spoke for an hour. Sometimes Nia left after 10 minutes because Arthur's grief occupied too much space. He learned not to ask for forgiveness each time she came. Instead, he answered questions. He admitted that Hazel had once tried to discuss a family secret, and he postponed the conversation because a company acquisition seemed urgent. He acknowledged signing the routing memorandum that allowed Bradley to handle the matter privately. He confessed that trust had become a way to avoid responsibility. Nia listened without comforting him. Her mother had spent years waiting to be recognized. Arthur did not deserve immediate relief simply because the truth had finally wounded him too. Several months after the hearing, the successor law firm delivered one final sealed envelope found with Hazel's original trust file. It was addressed to Arthur. He invited Nia to the lake house before opening it. They sat on the porch where the locket photograph had been taken. The repaired necklace rested on the table between them. A jeweler had restored the clasp while preserving the uneven strip of gold Arthur once cut from his watch. "You should read the letter first," he said. "It is addressed to you." She placed it with the document protecting you. "Protecting my mother," Nia corrected. Arthur nodded. "Protecting both of you." Nia opened the envelope. Hazel's letter began with Keisha's birth. She described the fear of being 17, the pressure from parents who believed secrecy could preserve a family name, and the helplessness of watching strangers carry away her child. She spent decades convincing herself that searching would cause more harm. When she finally found Keisha, the reunion was not simple. Keisha wanted the truth acknowledged. Hazel wanted time. Bradley advised silence, warning that recognition could create claims, damage the foundation, and expose Arthur to humiliation. Hazel followed that advice until she understood that caution had become another form of abandonment. The final paragraphs were written to Arthur. "I did not hide Keisha because I doubted her worth. I hid her because I doubted whether the life we built could survive the truth. That fear was unfair to her, and it was unfair to you. If this letter reaches you after I am gone, do not make the mistake I made. Do not protect the appearance of a family by denying the person who proves it was incomplete." Nia stopped reading. Arthur covered his face with one hand. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The lake moved softly beyond the porch, unchanged by every secret that had passed beside it. At last, Arthur lowered his hand. The worst part is knowing she was wrong. About what? She thought I would have rejected Keisha. Nia looked at him steadily. Would you have believed Hazel immediately? Arthur wanted to say yes. He could not. I do not know. That is why she was afraid. He nodded. The honest answer broke something in him that wealth, public apology, and court orders could not repair. Nia closed the letter and placed it in front of him. My mother waited for Hazel. Hazel waited for you. You waited for Bradley to explain everything. That is how one person's fear became another person's whole life. Arthur touched the envelope but did not open it again. I am sorry. I know. It was not forgiveness. It was the first acknowledgement that his apology had finally reached the right size. Before leaving, Nia removed the necklace and set it beside the letter. Keep it tonight. Arthur looked up. It belongs to you. It does. I will take it back tomorrow. He understood then. She was not surrendering it. She was giving him one night with the woman he had loved and never fully known. Arthur remained on the porch after Nia drove away. He opened the locket and studied the photograph of Hazel, Keisha, and the infant Nia. For years he had believed the deepest tragedy of his marriage was Hazel's death. Now he understood that loss had begun much earlier. In every moment truth approached, and someone with power pushed it aside. The next morning he returned the necklace himself. Nia met him outside her new apartment, where boxes of school books were stacked beside the door. Arthur placed the repaired chain in her hand. I thought about donating it to a museum someday, he said. Then I realized that would be another institution deciding where your family's history belongs. Nia fastened it around her neck. It belongs here. Arthur looked at the locket resting against her shirt. Yes, he said, it always did. The court case continued. The accounting remained open. Bradley's trial had not yet begun, and some questions about the missing funds might never receive complete answers. Justice moved through hearings, reports, delays, and imperfect consequences rather than a single triumphant moment. Still, Keisha's name entered the official trust record as Hazel Caldwell's daughter. Nia received the notice Bradley had tried to prevent. The foundation corrected its public statements. Arthur established independent beneficiary protections that no family attorney could override alone. None of those actions gave Keisha the recognition she deserved while alive. They did something smaller and still necessary. They prevented the people who buried her from writing the final version of her life. And perhaps that was the lesson hidden inside the necklace from the beginning. Power does not only reveal itself through the person who gives an order, signs a false document, or closes a locked door. It also appears in the person who could ask one more question and chooses not to. The board that values calm over truth, and the institution that calls silence protection because accountability feels expensive. Nia never became the billionaire's secret heir because that was never the truth. She became something harder for the Caldwell world to dismiss, a lawful beneficiary, the keeper of her mother's evidence, and the living proof that a family story does not become false simply because powerful people refuse to tell it. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts on one question. When the truth arrives too late to repair the past, what must people do to keep that delay from becoming another injustice? Bradley Mercer was stripped of control, indicted on selected financial and document-related charges, and left fighting for his professional future. Ashley Rhodes resigned in disgrace. Derrick Vaughn was fired after the security footage exposed what he had done. But the deepest lesson was never about a billionaire, a trust, or a necklace. Nia Bennett should not have needed Arthur Caldwell's influence, a forensic team, a courtroom order, or a hidden amendment to be treated like a human being. She should not have needed proof of who her grandmother was before anyone believed her, respected her, or allowed her to leave that room with dignity. And what about the people who do not have that title, that badge, that camera, that power? What happens when there is no billionaire watching, no recording preserved, and no lawyer willing to search the files everyone else wants buried? So ask yourself this. If you had been in that ballroom, would you have questioned the accusation, or would you have trusted the people in suits? Share your answer in the comments. Like, subscribe, share this story, and hit the bell. Every story on this channel is about one thing: the moment truth finally catches up. And it always does.